This podcast is for anyone that knows they haven't yet found and offered up their best work, but are compelled to seek it out and do it. Are you ready to move your desk? Well, Bill, it's great to talk to you again, or Dr. Brantley, I should call you, so everybody knows that you have taken time to learn things officially and unofficially.
Okay.
But even though you've talked before, can you take a couple minutes just to kind of share with us whatever you want us to know about you
Sure,
for
sure,
this
sure.
conversation?
Yeah, and again, you can call me Bill.
Okay.
But yeah, Dr. Bill Brantley. So I have a doctorate in public policy and administration. I have a master's in political management from George Washington University, MBA in project management, and a master's in organizational education, and a bunch of certifications. I tell you, the quarantine was a good time for me because it took away my 3-hour commute. So I actually had 3 hours each day, added up for 5 days, 15 hours to go and get certifications. So I went crazy. Let's see. I work work with you, of course, at Federal Housing Finance Agency as a contractor, W-2 contractor, but I also have my own business, BASA, Brantley Advanced Social Sciences Applications, and do some outside consulting with different training departments and clients to help them make their operations better, the training operations better.
So you're a very busy man.
Try to be, yeah.
No, I remember you telling me that you took full advantage of the virus and got some more certifications and everything. And I always forget that there's a whole variety of other degrees in there as well. The virus also, and I also quit my job during that point, and I realized that it took away, I can't remember the person who said it, but automobile university, you had to figure out a new way to learn.
Hmm.
If you had decided to learn on your commute, you're learning at home. So it's neat
Oh,
to
yeah.
see that you took advantage of that. I think one of the things you took advantage of in the last couple of years is learning a lot about AI. And that's
Hmm.
why we had another conversation about AI and project management and that
Hmm.
kind of thing. And so it's been fun learning from you. And then we were talking a few weeks ago, like, oh, let's apply AI to time management and mind management and all of those
Hmm.
things. And so I'm excited for this conversation, especially since I've always been a fan of time management and mind management, which is fairly current term that people are starting to use for
Hmm.
mindset and making changes in your life. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
uh, glad to be here to talk with you.
Yeah, and AI, I actually got into AI really early because, I was a kid in the 80s, had a Commodore 64, was entranced at the time by the artificial intelligence. We didn't really call it artificial intelligence at that time. We had expert systems. And that's also got into time management and productivity because I started working as a paralegal for the Kentucky Natural Resources Cabinet. And this is going to date me so bad, but we had WordPerfect, and I was learning WordPerfect and the macros. And I used to be what's called a collections paralegal. I would be the person after the legal judgment has been passed on our environmental, people, our environmental crime stuff. I would be the person that would file all the stuff to get money, to garnish their wages and everything. And that's a tedious job. There's lots and lots of forms to fill out over and over again with different information. So one of the things I learned kind of early time management in the early 90s was, hey, I can take those macros and program my documents, and all I have to do is enter the information once and I'm finished. Okay. So something that used to take, and thank goodness the statute of limitations is over, used to take me a day or two to do, I could get done in 15 minutes, which meant I had more time to go run to the coffee house and hang out. I should be saying that, but that's been in the 90s, so that's a long time ago.
Right. And I think the challenge is going, okay, am I going to use that spare time to hang out, or am I going to use that spare time to also do things I say I'll do if I had more time?
Oh, yeah. And it's funny you bring it up because we had a speaker at the Training Industry Conference Expo. I was there in early June, talk about that with artificial intelligence. He found that one thing that happens is people that are good with it, they either use it to be more productive or they use it to be productive, but then they kind of, go run off to the coffee house.
Right. Which may be productive in its own kind of way, right? If
Right.
it's rest or
Mhm.
relationships or you get big ideas. So,
Exactly.
um, is that something like right now? You've been a big user for a long time, you said, and especially even with the newer tools. Is it saving you time? Is it making you think differently? Is it you can use your time differently, or what's going on?
It is saving me time, and that's why I like to talk about mind management and time management. So time management, yes, it's saving me a lot of time. Give you a great
Okay.
example. I create a lot of courses. Now, I don't let AI do all the coursework for me. I don't like the way it writes courses. I don't think it does a good job. I think you still need the human touch on that. So I create
Yes.
my own courses. I use the instructional system design. You're very familiar with that.
Hmm.
And I use it to do that for me. But once my course is created and I have the information and I have the scripts for it and the storyboards, right? I'll feed that into the AI and say, now create some multiple choice questions for me. Create an essay question for me. Create a, true or false question based on the knowledge that I've given it. And that saves me a lot of time because, as you know, sitting there trying to think of 10 multiple choice questions with their answers, the two wrong and one right, it takes some time. And I love the fact it can do it very fast. Now, they're not always perfect, but it's like 80% of my work is already done for me. Do a few tweaks in here and there, and I've got the multiple choice questions. And it's I like that part of it.
I think that's what I've been learning and talking with you, and
Hmm.
experiencing some of it myself, starting to go, oh, this is a new tool in the toolkit, maybe, but you're
Hmm.
kind of still the project manager of
Yeah.
how to use the tool,
Hmm.
because some things aren't correct. And I know all of us has experienced this, right? Where we've taken content from it, and at first it sounds really beautiful. But then when you get down to the nuts and bolts of like how something actually works as a process or something, you're like,
Hmm.
okay, it gave me something to edit. I still need to go in and tweak it
Right.
because I'm the human that knows how this actually goes in this particular setting. And then sometimes going, oh, maybe I need to step away from the tool and just think about this for a few minutes because it
Right.
gave me something to start from, but I'm still needed to finish
Hmm.
it and bring it all together. But I like how, you know, when you're using the example of test questions, a lot of us don't particularly like spending a lot of time on that. So we
Hmm.
might spend a lot of mind churn
Yeah.
on going, oh, I've got to do it. Oh, where do I start? Oh, how do I make it not be so obvious what the wrong answers are? And having that little boost to help us becomes a great little
Hmm.
starter, at least, right? And then supposedly free you up to spend more time on the instructional strategy in that case, right? To make the actual
Yeah.
content more interesting and
Exactly.
engaging.
Oh yeah. I mean, another great example where it saved me time because this used to take me hours. I
Mm,
would record a 10-minute video, and then when I get the transcript from the video, I would have to go through and when you speak, you speak differently than when you write. And it would take
right.
me time to correct the grammar, time to get the sentences structured and take out all the verbal stuff. And I would
Oh,
spend for a 10-minute video, I would spend maybe an hour, hour and a half just cleaning it up, the transcript.
that
Now
makes
I can
sense.
just, yeah, now I just give it to one tool I use, otter.ai, and it cleans it up for me and makes it sound great. So it reads well. Hmm.
Wow. I haven't done that yet because I'm very lucky with my podcast service, podcast.co.
Hmm.
It makes a transcript in whatever language I want, which I only choose English. But, when reviewing it, it's really good, but it's still
Hmm.
flow of conversation. So would it take that transcript and make it as if it was a book chapter? Like, does it have
Yes.
that capability to take it from that to go make it a little more formal?
Mhm. Yes, it has, and it's really that's really good too. And it's also like, for example, if I want to leave a learning aid with someone, so I can just sit down, record on PowerPoint, and then PowerPoint take the file, put it in that, and it'll turn into a bullet list for me. It'll turn into a small blog article, whatever format I want, and it's very
Oh,
easy to read and such. And it's a nice way of condensing a lot of what I say.
okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, which is something that some of us need because I'm prolific at getting words out of my head, but it doesn't mean it's pleasant to
Sure.
read.
Oh yeah, exactly. And the best thing too, if when you have other guests on here, and let's say you take this transcript here and you can run it through that, it can take our transcript and then turn into some nice article, which won't be a complete transcription of it, but it'll be an article based on our conversation, which is very readable.
As you're talking, I just had a conversation before this discussion where someone's saying, oh, I hear that AI is going to take away all the jobs. And I said, no,
Hmm.
it's not. It's going to take away some, but it'll also create others. And as you're talking, you start to realize, oh, even though there may not be the same kind of need as an article writer, there'd be someone that would need to review what comes out of the AI, make sure that
Hmm.
it's appropriate for a blog post or another article or for a book chapter or for a bulleted list, right? A job aid or something. And so you start to realize there's different opportunities that come out of it, which is interesting as you bring that up. I wanted to ask you what you have experienced as you've gone through this process. How does this impact how you manage your mind?
Well, again, what I do with this, and it frees up a lot of time for me, and it allows me to really
Mhm.
concentrate on what's important. So I'll give you a great example. I use something called Julius.ai. And what Julius
Okay.
does is it basically is a AI where you can take your data sets and put them in. And before then, I'm a certified data scientist. I've done all this stuff. And I got to tell you, as a certified data scientist, 80% of what you do is just getting the data in shape to be analyzed. In the
Correct.
technical term is ETL, extract, transform, and load. So I extract it with this Python script and I transform it and, maybe R or Python. So I'm spending a lot of time just getting the data into shape. What I love about Julius, and it takes away that job, and we call that data munging in the data world. It takes away the data munging job, which I don't mind because it takes my data set as it is, fixes it the way I want it, very quickly, and then I can have it analyze the data for me. But when I say analyze, I can tell it how I want it analyzed, and it can generate the Python script for me. And if you're a Python programmer, I can jump in and change things and, alter it and basically have a conversation with the data set. So how it's changed is it saves me a lot of time on getting the data ready, and it gives me more time to actually get into the data and ask it questions, and based on its questions, shape it how to get deeper insights in it. So, for example, you and I are familiar with this. We former feds. We used to do the yearly federal employee viewpoint survey, big
Mhm.
census, 90 questions, whatever. I love the data set. Lots of good stuff about employee engagement and how we trust our leaders and all this stuff. A gold mine of data. And I would go and collect the data files. And I used to do this, and it would take me 2 or 3 days to go through all that and get it set up
Right.
and then do the analysis. And of course, you get a little bit better with R and Python, but still, it was a long amount of time. Just the other day, I'm working on a book chapter about leadership communication, and I'm using the FEVS as a research tool. All I did was just upload the latest FEVS file into Julius and then said, "Are you ready?" Yes, it's ready. And started asking it questions. I didn't have to arrange anything, whatever. I just gave it the code book and the raw data and had a conversation with it. It was producing graphs and really digging into the data. So I was able to
Mhm.
skip a day or two of data munging to actually get into the data analysis. And because I had that extra time with it, I can also, based on its answers, ask even deeper questions with it. So that's how it's changed my time management.
I think, this is a great example as someone that's listening to you talk, because as I hear you talk, I'm going, okay, you came to the problem with an entire skill set in data and different
Mhm.
languages and understanding how to do work, business processes, and everything. So the output you're going to get, I believe, would be much different than if you just took some person, that's brand new to the workforce and say, go, go take this data and do something with it. Because what you just described, yes, AI helped you through the process, but you knew where to check on things
Yeah.
based upon the languages. You knew what questions to ask based
Hmm.
upon all of your experience and everything. And
Hmm.
I think it's a powerful example of how we still need Bill.
Yeah.
And we need Bill to incorporate this tool into his tool set, because you just described a whole slew of personal skill sets help you use AI in meaningful ways where you're not going to get boilerplate
Hmm.
responses, and you're training it
Hmm.
in the process. And we need more people like you that are training it. So it's better for those that are amateur that come to it and think what answers they're getting are correct or efficient or whatever, when maybe those answers aren't, but they
Hmm.
don't know enough to know that they aren't.
The best way I think about using AI like this, and I love using a cooking example, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with this. So you have master chefs,
Oh,
and many
right.
master chefs don't do, now they can if they need to and if they want to. They can do the chopping the vegetables and preparing the broth and all these other things. That's what we have sous chefs for. And we have other assistants in the kitchen. So it's the master chef that pulls it together and assembles it and makes that great dish.
Right.
But for all the prep work and everything, you have a whole bunch of other cooks. And that's how I see AI. It's like my prep cooks that are getting stuff ready for me so that I can, and then apply to it, what I need to do to make a great dish out of it. And it doesn't diminish me because I know how to do the rest of these steps.
Right. You've done them before.
Yeah, I've done it before, and that's fine. But I can give them to my prep cook or my AI and say, okay, prep this for me so I can assemble it into the final product.
And that's a great reminder too that, for people that may not have a lot of experience, how it's still important to take a step back
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps get an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes that influences master chefs to make the decisions they make, right? That on the
Mm-hmm.
surface might be like, why'd they choose that? Oh, they choose that because 20 years ago, they were starting out in the kitchen and they were told to slice the celery this way and they did it another way and they learned why you don't do this. So they do it this way. So later, even though they're not slicing it anymore, they can inform someone, this
Mm-hmm.
is what you need to do. This is the best way. I'm saving you 10 years of mistakes or whatever.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
it's a very interesting process to go, oh, how do we go forward, leveraging what still needs to be the basic habits and tasks
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes while also learning where you can skip and not learn. Like some of the examples you share. I mean, I took basic and Fortran programming. I never use them anymore, but I always use HTML, right? When I look at things like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I can tweak this because I remember you use these tags for bold. But do I still use my Fortran and basic? I don't know. And do people still need to? So
Yeah.
it's learning what to embrace going forward as a
Mm-hmm.
skill, even if the tool can do it, and what
Mm-hmm.
may just be gone.
And if you still don't use Fortran in BASIC, but you still remember how you learn to think as a computer
Right.
programmer and how to put things together, because my first language was Pascal, well, BASIC and Pascal. And just, I could, if you gave me a couple of days, I could probably get myself back up to speed on Pascal, but it's more of the thinking of subroutines and modules and how to
Right.
structure your problem so that it can be answered by the subroutines and modules and such. So it's like, as a master chef, they may not be as fast at chopping vegetables as some of the prep cooks because they haven't had as much, time with it, but they do remember and they remember how things fit
Right.
together. Hmm.
Right. There's a little muscle memory in there.
Yeah.
Like you said, it can come back within a day if they had to sit and
Hmm.
do it again.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's this interesting balance, when we talk about, okay, now we've got this tool that can supposedly help us be more efficient and
Hmm.
always bring strategically things together to go, okay, how do we think ahead on how to use our mind in our jobs and how to use that extra time that may be created in meaningful ways because we can't always go hang out at the
Right.
shop. Like we need to, how can we then
Hmm.
decide and prioritize other things and bring it into our work world? Have you seen examples already where you're like, I've saved time and as a result, I am now able to be more strategic with my solutions or think more creatively or
Yeah.
anything like that?
Well, that's why I bring up the mind management. And I really like this book. I read this a couple of years ago. It was by David Kadavy, Kadavy. And he says mind management, not time management, and productivity when creativity matters. And it's, he's more of an artist person here, but he was talking about this, the whole idea of mind management. Yeah, and I mean, I've seen the people that are very good with time management and very productive. And, I saw them in the law office and we used to call them happy hamsters. They were great at doing stuff and getting stuff churned out, but they never stopped to ask, well, is it really important? Is this contributing to anything? And that's one of the biggest stuff. I've seen a lot of folks that are very good at being productive on tasks that really don't matter. And the whole
Right.
concept behind the mind management here is that as he says, time management treats time as a commodity. Every hour is the same. Every minute's the same. And it's not. And you and I know that. I mean, we have
Right.
some moments where my 1 minute, I've got some great creative inspiration, and next hour I'm tired. So it's kind of like that's the difference between time management and mind management, how you treat your time. And then the second thing about time management is that if you're producing, then you're productive. And it really means, are you reaching a goal? Are you creating some kind of value? And it's kind of the shift in thinking in project management. We talked about this before. With project management, it used to be all about meeting your schedule, meeting resource, making sure you make time, schedule, cost, all that stuff, making sure you got your resources, didn't use more resources than you needed to. The iron triangle. And nowadays,
Right.
it's more like, well, you want to do that. That's important, but you really want to create value. Because I've been on projects, you've probably been on projects, and you've seen projects out in the world where it was on time, well done, great, but no value from it.
Yes.
And I mean, the technology industry has a history of these great gadgets out there that were wonderful, but never took off.
Right. And some of that is because rapid change in
Hmm.
technology, but then others of it is, if you didn't make sure it was relevant goodness along the way,
Hmm.
it will not get incorporated into,
Hmm. Yeah.
what others are doing.
Well, the classic example I love to give is the Google Wave. I don't know if anyone remembers Google Wave.
Oh,
This is early 2010, 2011. This is when Google is going to revolutionize all our communication. So it was supposed to be this Google Wave thing, which is kind of a email chat kind of combination. I don't remember it too well, but I mean, they launched it with great fanfare and it disappeared within a year because it
mm,
was like, well, what are you trying to solve? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And why is that problem important to me? So where's the value in this? And I'm pretty sure Google being Google, they probably were very good with the time management piece. They probably had some very
mhm.
productive code engineers out there working on this, but there was no value. So it's like, okay, this is well done from a time management standpoint. They met their targets,
Yes.
but mind management is basically, well, what can I do with this?
It's reminding me of those days where, especially in government, you'd have sometimes 8 to 12 meetings a day if you could fit
Hmm.
in half an hour meetings, right? And you were somehow supposed to lead some of the meetings, have stuff prepared to meetings you were participating in, and then some you were lucky enough to just listen, which
Hmm.
often meant you were multitasking along with it. And you start to see when you step away from that how I don't remember what you called it. It was the hamster wheel thing, though.
Oh yeah, the
Um,
happy hamster.
the happy hamster.
Yeah, he's
Like,
just happy running his wheel.
and I think a lot of people, it can be very easy to get caught in that, especially if you have a stable job. You're like, hey, if I just show up every day doing these things, will
Hmm.
kind of perform.
Hmm.
I'll demonstrate that I'm engaged, and that kind of thing. And I remember being in that world, having to make sure I took early morning or late at night or weekends to like make sure I'm like, am I focused? Am I being the happy hamster?
Yeah.
Or am I actually getting us to the outcomes we seek?
Hmm.
And what I found now, not having that all the time, is going, oh, the funny thing is the great solutions don't come while I'm sitting here being happy hamster. They
Hmm.
come when I go decide to cut tree branches off the tree later or mow the lawn
Oh
or
yeah.
go take some time. And then all of a sudden, boom, the idea is right there for me. I'm like, well, if I was just sitting here trying to be efficient with every minute, that idea wouldn't have come to me. It
Hmm.
only came when I stepped away from all of that and
Yeah.
with this free time that's created, like making sure I do something different that then engages the mind differently. So that's what my hope is
Right.
as we have these tools go, it helps me be more efficient with some things, but also triggers ideas so I
Oh
can
yeah.
step away more and be a human versus a robot working
Well,
and have those experiences.
David talks about this in his book in Mind Management about the four stages. And you're right, when you go out and cut a tree. So there's like preparation. And these tools
Mm,
can help us with the preparation part. I mean, I'll sit down with ChatGPT and I'll ask it questions and I'm having some ideas and tell me a little bit more about this, tell me a little bit more about that, and I'll save the chats and I'll go away. So I've got some
mm,
stuff in my head from talking to it. And it's
right.
and the thing about people, we still process things even unconsciously. So that's the
Mm,
incubation stage. So we're in a preparation stage and we get the incubation stage. And then when you're out there cutting, and you're still thinking about because you're cutting trees and I wash dishes. That's how I get things by.
oh,
Then
yep.
you get the illumination stage. It's like all this stuff starts
Huh.
coalescing and oh, okay, I get, a burst of insight and I can see how this fits together. And then you
Mhm.
go out and test it some more, verify what you came up with. which AI can help you with there. So that's where I
Right.
see the AI tools helping me on the front end and the back end. Give me all
Right.
kinds of data, loading up the mind, and then go out and shop for groceries and
Hmm.
let it incubate. And then
Right.
something will hit me. And then, yeah, then I can verify it.
Right. That's it's that. So there's space created that's necessary, is what I'm
Right.
hearing, and
Yeah.
it's okay. That and when you create space like that, you are letting go of efficiencies in one area toward gaining
Mhm.
them in a different area of the problem
Right.
solving. It
Right.
sounds like.
Yeah, when I
Um,
used to work at Patent and Trademark Office and I'd be working on the new course, I would do a bunch of research and get the client's needs and all that stuff and kind of make an outline. And then I would get up, take a walk to Starbucks. We had three within walking distance. It was amazing. And
wow.
within that 10-minute walk, 10 to 15-minute walk, just let things incubate. And by the time I got back to the office, I knew what I needed to create. And then I
Wow.
would sit down and make the PowerPoint and there we go. And we run it by some folks, verify, and there you go. Yeah.
That's reminding me, like I used to do some walking meetings sometimes, and I loved
Hmm.
those because you were freed up. You're out in nature and all
Yeah.
that stuff, but you're freed up. But you're reminding me, and I can't remember if we talked about this before. I was making some of these workbooks slash books,
Hmm.
and after I had created the draft is when I decided, "Hey, I'm going to go ask AI, Chat GPT, this question about what's needed because it was planning your year.
Hmm.
And it was interesting because it came up very quickly with all these components, and time management was one of them.
Hmm.
Mindset was another, schedule, like prioritization, all that stuff. And at first glance, I was like, oh, like it did it so easily. But then when I looked at what it came up with, I'm like, oh, this is just verifying what I already knew. So
Hmm.
good. I didn't have any gaps. What it didn't do is put it in a format that was usable. And the way I did it was process oriented, but also mindset along the way, right? Because we can all
Hmm.
make a schedule, we can all decide what's
Sure.
done, but keeping the proper mindset along the way is a challenge, right? Because you don't want to do the thing you planned when it's time to do it, right? You have an excuse to go do something else. Where,
Exactly.
it was neat to use it. Like I used it as the test and verify in your
Hmm.
example. I didn't use it on the front end, but I was at least able to go
Hmm.
verify, like, oh, good, I had all the components, and I know how to arrange them better than the results I got from that. But to see how I like this preparation, incubation, illumination, test, and verify.
Yeah,
That there's these uses, but you're still needed to create the space around the
sure.
edges
And
to
this is
bring
and
that
this
all
is where
together.
you are in tune with your natural mental states. And that's what he talks about. So, like if you're a morning person and you can really think better in the morning, that's when you do the preparation incubation stuff, maybe. The
Ah,
information. And like, for example, the other boring things, like probably the most boring thing I did as a trainer was registering people for a class and then verifying that they took the class and then
okay,
updating their transcripts with just click, 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 all that kind of stuff. And okay, so I would say that for the afternoon when I was about ready to crash, and I didn't
right.
have to put too much mental energy into it to make it work. So I didn't have to be creative or anything. I just had to look at my list, make sure it's here. That's all I need to do. Yeah. And that's the
Yeah,
best thing about finding you. Hmm.
that's interesting because I've discovered I'm kind of an early morning and sometimes a late night person, right?
Hmm.
I think maybe it just has to do with what everybody else is doing or not doing. I don't know. But it's interesting. My afternoon is like I got to be walking, I got to be doing some kind of manual labor or something. Otherwise, I might as well take a siesta. And I'm
Right. Hmm.
not going to take a siesta. I'm not going to be taking a nap, but
Yeah.
but finding those rhythms for yourself and how you can do that when
Hmm.
you're in the structure of being employed by someone else, right? Like
Yeah.
figuring out how you can do that within that structure, I think is important.
That's why it's important to really think about, is it a time management task or is it a mind management? Because with time
Yes.
management, all the time is a commodity. It is the same. If I'm
Hmm.
washing dishes, 1 minute washing dishes is just like another minute washing dishes. Okay. But the mind
Hmm.
management is not every minute is the same. And sometimes it's an incubation minute. So I'm not really thinking about it. But then there's the elimination minute, which I really need to pay attention to.
I think that's a conscious like I like even using washing dishes. There's sometimes where I do stand there and go, I am going to plan this presentation in my head right now.
Hmm.
Like it's a very focused effort going, I'm not writing anything, but I'm going to think through the pieces and parts. And I do this
Hmm.
often in walks, right? But it's kind of talking to yourself first too, saying,
Oh,
you
yeah.
are now going to focus on solving this problem. So by the time
Hmm.
you go sit down and write or create something, it was already up
Hmm.
here. You're just putting it on paper.
Yeah.
But that is a conscious mind management choice. And
Hmm.
I love how I got to read this book because I know the last few years I've been highly focused on some of the same concept of being such a time manager person, realizing no, the mind helps you determine what's priority among the priorities, what what steps to take and what choices to make every step of the way.
Hmm.
Um, because that'll get you the right outputs. And for some people, they're going to get those outputs in 3 hours, and some people are going to take two
Right.
weeks, depending upon how they manage their mind. Because if you
Hmm.
don't manage it and you just do happy hamster, you'll
Hmm.
probably have a lot of rework
Exactly.
because you didn't take the time to
And I
think
like what you
ahead,
brought up
think
too
through it
about.
all,
Mhm.
and use a tool while doing it.
Exactly. And I like what you brought up about, the output piece. And he talks about this called sloppy operating procedures. The thing you're talking about outputs. And you and I have done this in our jobs with standard operating procedures, and we've written them. I just wrote
Right.
one last week. Okay. And I'll be honest, to save me some time, I used yours as a template.
That's
So
what we need to do, right?
exactly. So that's your time management. Basically, how to do something the best way, the quickest way. That's a time management tool, standard operating procedures. What he suggests is start with what he calls sloppy operating procedures. You just open up a
Mm-hmm.
folder and you start collecting how you do stuff. Don't worry if it's organized. Don't worry if it's optimized or anything like that, but just start collecting. How do you do something? And as you continue to do it, you refine the process. So you start,
Yes.
because I know a lot of companies, they want to, or organizations I've been in, they want to jump right to the standard operating procedure on something new.
Mhm.
And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we should do it. And I like more the observation of how are we doing it and then work from that. Because
Yes.
there's a great law out there, and I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name. I think it's, is it Gill? Gill. I think it is him. Um, Complex systems, most effective, successful complex systems evolve from simple systems. And that's the idea
Mm.
here. It's like we start with a small system, we start with something that's pretty simple, sloppy operating procedure. And then as we get better with it, we can optimize parts of it, we can make it better, we can cut off parts we don't need, we can make it a good
Yeah.
standard operating procedure.
This fits in line with, I don't know who all talks about it, but I learned about it from Seth Godin, where he's into marketing and customer relationship
Hmm.
management and getting products out the door. And he's like, ship it. He's like, because Apple did this, right? They ship imperfect, but they get feedback from consumers and they
Hmm.
keep improving it. And and I think all of us have experienced this, even I think with a simple email, right? You spend an hour writing an important email because you want it to be just so for
Hmm.
some, you don't want to create any fires that aren't there or,
Hmm.
and then the minute after you send it, you read it
Hmm.
again and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I completely missed the point. I should have said it this way, but you
Hmm.
only get that answer after you ship it. And
Hmm.
I think that's kind of that aligns with this sloppy operating procedures. And what I really like, this is something, in fact, I have to figure out how to describe this better. I had an assignment for all the program managers when I had them reporting to me, and I said, because I did it myself, but I said, I want you to write a manual for your job, kind of standard operating procedures for your job.
Hmm.
And everyone kind of looks at you with a glazed look like, what? And the point was to start sloppy, right? To go, what do I do? And just write down a couple of things.
Hmm.
And from there, write down a couple of things because what I found when I created it for me, and it was over like a year or so period, is the process of creating it started to make you think and wonder and go,
Hmm.
wait, what could this job be? What should this job be?
Yeah.
Where can I start getting beyond the day-to-day minutia and actually thinking strategically about what I
Hmm.
offer and capture it in the manual? And then as you capture it, you start changing how you do your work because you want to be better at reporting or you want to be
Hmm.
better at thinking strategically or you want to go, maybe we need this new weekly habit to check on data from the help desk and make changes in design or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was the reason behind it. And when you said the sloppy procedures and realizing in the process of creating that manual for myself,
Hmm.
also one of the things to keep in mind was if you do this, you start to feel more comfortable up leveling and moving on from your job because you
Hmm.
feel like you'd be leaving a good resource in place for someone to replicate it. And
Absolutely.
a lot of us care about that, right? We don't want it to fall apart when we leave. We want it to
Hmm.
keep going, you know, keep improving. So it kind of fits into that because there's something about as you're talking, I realize, oh, this is mind management. This is where we can start really creating
Hmm.
value. And then even as I say this out loud, I'm like, wow, I should send one of those manuals through the AI, see what else it comes up with
Hmm.
that I didn't even think about. So it's a
Yeah.
very, these are all exercises that require human interaction,
Hmm.
but the tools can support us and help us grow, perhaps.
I mean, if I can offer this, this is another great thing from this book, and I love this, is the seven mental states. And I've used these too with AI. And I'll give you the list as we go along. So the first part of the mental state here is prioritize. What are you trying to solve? What's the most important thing? Because I've been in some organizations, they want to create a standard operating procedure for everything. And is
Yeah,
that really necessary? I mean, what's the most important things we do? Maybe we should start with that first. Okay.
correct.
And then with the sloppy, you start exploring. So, okay, we decide these are the most important things we want to make an operational process out of. Let's explore them. Now, we have an idea in our mind how things should be done, but how are they actually done? Let's explore the gap. Let's
Mm.
explore the differences. Research that some more. That's the third state. So we got prioritize, explore, and research. And from that, we can start generating. And there's a whole science out there called process mining, which is what you do. You have tools that help you, AI that helps you. Look at your processes and say, well, what's the model that you're using? How does your actual process fit that model? What can we do to correct that? Or what kind of model can we build out of that? Okay. So we're prioritizing what are our most important questions. We're exploring them, we're researching them, and we're generating solutions. And then once we get to a point here, this is after our sloppy operating procedures, we polish them up. We start turning them to standard operating procedures. And that's when we administrate from them. That's when we say, okay, this is the way we do things. This is the way we handle credit card calls. This is the way we handle requests for Freedom of Information Act requests. Okay. So we have the administrative part, but we've gone through that process to help refine the real thing that we're doing. And then we recharge. And the recharge thing is go back and investigate your processes. I mean, you may have, I've been in law offices where we had a great process 10 years ago, but things have changed, statutes have changed, laws have changed. It doesn't apply anymore. It doesn't work for us.
Right. The-
I just said we just go there and we dust off the old standard operating procedure and we just act like the world hasn't changed in the last 20 years.
Well, and that's where it's the balance, right? Because I love process, refining process and everything, making
Mhm.
things make sense, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of like, all that experience working for fast food.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
follow this process, get it done, get it done right, fast, whatever. But it is interesting that sometimes we can get wedded to the process and
Hmm.
making sure everybody follows the documents and everyone's rolling their eyes going, I can just take it across the hall or
Yeah.
whatever the thing is. But I like these what was it called? The seven mental states that we
Yeah.
go
Several
through to
mental states.
refine.
Yeah.
And I think in that process, you decide what needs to be a process and what
Mhm.
needs to be where you can customize it based
Yeah.
upon your the situation at the moment or whatever. I've noticed this is a challenge for small organizations that are growing, not realizing that no longer does the one man band work, right?
Mhm.
Because you'll be dividing up different responsibilities. And it's a real struggle for someone to go, oh, I'm giving up this part of it for the good of the organization to produce more or to be
Mhm.
more effective or whatever. But what you're saying is also reminding me that one of the mind management skills or mindset skills that we need to all have going forward is that ability to let go.
Mhm.
Let go of what we know from the past, let go of things and go, oh, maybe we do need a new process. Maybe we do need to revisit this. Maybe
Mhm.
I need different minds in the room helping me
Mhm.
think. And sometimes it can be a very quick change. Like I know when we got all the right players in the room sometimes and we led them through updating a process, we could get it done in half a day when we thought it would take a full day. If
Hmm.
everyone was allowed to say their piece
Sure.
about what was right and wrong in it. So just that adaptability
Right.
that we get to have as we
Mhm.
manage
Yeah,
time.
and in many cases, when you redo the process, you don't have to throw out everything. You can
Right.
add new stuff. And I think that's one thing people just are so worried about. Like, we're going to toss the entire process out the window. It's like, no, we can adapt it. We can lose some things, put in some new stuff, and you'll actually like it better because we're changing or reflecting the new times.
So as you have been exploring all this and creating more time for yourself, are you adding more projects to your life to take on with that time that you have available? Or how are you using your personal time different? I guess I should
Well,
say, as you use these tools in new ways.
well, the thing that helps me the most is prioritizing. That's the first step. And basically, and I did like a lot of small business owners do when they start off. We want to give you everything because we want to show you how valuable we are in the marketplace. So I
Right.
can do all this stuff. And I realized talking to my business coaches and such, yeah, you could do all that stuff. So can a bunch of other people. What can you do that no one else can do? Work on that. So
Mm,
it's to prioritize. And then we explore from that. So working with my company now, I realize I can build courses, and you see me build courses. We build courses, but
mhm,
there's lots of people out there building courses. What can I
mhm,
bring to the table that's more than just building another course? And that's when I
right.
realized, okay, I can be very strategic because I've run training departments and I'm really strategic in helping them operate effectively, helping them improve the processes using
Yes.
value chain engineering, all this stuff. So that's my, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, Tom Poland, I think it is, a marketing guy, talks about your magic. What's your magic in the marketplace
Mm,
and getting that out there? This is where the mind management stuff helps me because once I get what I'm trying to do, now the time management, the productivity, the AI stuff can come in and help me because, okay, now I
mhm.
know what my processes are and I start with a sloppy operating procedure and we're making it tighter. And now I can start fitting in AI where it fits to help make that part of it faster. So, for example, I was creating some landing pages this weekend
Mm,
to help market some of the aspects of the service I do. And I had AI help me write the marketing messages. So I gave it some ideas, some general parameters. It outputted some stuff, and I said, that sounds good. That doesn't sound too good. And one thing I recommend to folks when they use AI, don't just take the first answer. You can say,
mm.
hey, regenerate. So I regenerate 4 or 5 times, throw them into a Word document, look at them, read them. I think, well, I like this better. I like this phrase better, and pull them together. So it's kind of like with
Yeah.
my master chef and my prep cooks. Oh, this
Right.
guy cut the celery much better than this other guy. So we'll put that celery in. Or this guy
Yes.
grilled the meat better. So, it's like selecting from the ingredients and putting it together.
Glad you brought up that example. I mean, I have paid someone to create sales pages for me in a long ago past. And it's interesting because they said, no, no, I'm going to show you how to do it. Like, I don't actually want to do it.
Uh-huh.
I want someone to, because I am better at creating a sales page for someone else. But for
Hmm.
myself, complete garbage because I'm all up in my head talking about mind management, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't want to sell, I don't want to like market myself, nothing like
Hmm.
that. But in this case, it helps with mind management because you can go to a tool and do something that may be uncomfortable for some marketing themselves
Sure.
and put it in this kind of more subject or objective tool that says, hey, these things you do are pretty great. Let's massage it and create it into a
Sure.
sales thing that you
Hmm.
can then work with. And so, in some ways, it gives you a freedom to get out of your head. Let
Right.
some other tool show you, yes, those are skills
Mhm.
that we can highlight. And so, I really like that example.
Yeah.
Um,
And here's the funny thing. So you may hire someone and you give them all this stuff and you're like, I wonder what they think about me. And I wonder if that's, I don't care what ChatGPT thinks about me. It doesn't think about me.
right.
It's just, it's just producing stuff for me. So I
Just
could care.
regurgitating things.
Yeah, it's regurgitating thing. I don't care what it thinks about me. So I'll throw all kinds of crap at it and see what it comes up with. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's important for some of us, right? Especially
Mhm.
as we take on different roles that are
Yeah.
perhaps a little different than the past. And I
Hmm.
know that I forget that I know stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then people will start talking about something like you mentioned, the training department. They'll start saying certain things, and right off, all of a sudden, all this stuff starts pouring out of me that I forgot that I knew.
Hmm.
Like, oh, which causes me, like when you were talking, to go, oh, this is also a reminder that you need to be in roles at some point where you are leading a training department so that you
Mhm.
can be an example demonstrating how to strategically use the tools
Right.
in the way that you've been using them to pass that on to those, that would
Exactly.
be reporting.
I mean, I got you brought up a great point there, and I see this a lot because I coach entrepreneurs and I coach, solopreneurs and all this folks. And
Mhm.
honestly, the biggest thing that gets in their way is themselves and this
Yep.
whole imposter syndrome thing, because I remember working with this one guy, and he was brilliant. He was really accomplished. He was great at what he did, but he kept getting his own way because he just didn't think that. And he kept
Yes.
questioning everything he did. And he would start his daily routine. And you know this as a small business owner. The hardest thing is getting up in the morning and starting the day. You got
Mm.
your task list, but what are we going to do, right? And he would be paralyzed. Like, how can I make this a perfect day? And I said, stop that. Stop that. You're not going to make it a perfect day. I know you're still thinking the
Right.
time management mind. How can I
Right.
make my time so productive and wonderful? And I said, stop that. Stop doing that because you're not there. Maybe in the
Right.
morning,
Baby steps.
eat some, read some email, drink your coffee, take some time to incubate some ideas.
Hmm.
I said one morning, I said to him, why don't you just go to a movie? Go find an early matinee and go see a movie. And he was
Yeah.
aghast because, oh my gosh, is that productive? And I said, you're not productive now, are you?
Right.
You need to
I
break away from yourself.
I think that's one reason I loved going and learning coaching methods, right?
Hmm.
Because I think, yeah, I hopefully I've been helpful to some people, but I think it's helped me a lot being such an efficient person, and I can outwork most people, right?
Yeah.
Like I can just keep going and going. If I find it engaging, I can keep switching tasks and I accomplish things. But I needed to learn how to, no kidding, stay true to my
Hmm.
priorities that I had established while I was using the prefrontal cortex, you know,
Hmm.
or whatever, and allow space,
Right.
allow that period of, and what's really good about being an efficient person is you start, because I have priorities to be outside and to be active
Mhm.
and to doing things,
Yeah.
those moments are very productive because I've realized, ooh, that is the time for my brain to think and
Hmm.
release and reflect and all this stuff. So it's not time wasted.
Right.
And because some of us are, and I even see this with my own child, he's like, oh, he's so mad if he gets up late because he doesn't want to waste time. I'm like, oh, wow, I have, he's gotten some of that from me. Maybe he was born with it like I was, but I like trying to use every minute and going, but
Yeah.
some of that is wasted if you're stuck in that. I want to be so efficient and use all the time right. And like, let some of us relax, which is why it's so good to have a few
Mhm.
people in life that are the rogue people that are always willing to ditch whatever they're doing to go have fun. I think some of us need those people in our lives. So we
Right.
remember fun can be a valuable tool in
Sure.
getting your best ideas
Oh yeah,
too.
exactly. I mean, exactly. Because it's like, I want to make sure every moment's productive, and well, it's not going to happen because not every moment's going to be productive. And sometimes you're trying to be productive in a trivial way that you're not letting your mind
Yes.
incubate and do something right. It's like another cooking
Right.
example because I love cooking with woks and I love
Hmm.
Chinese and Thai food. And there are recipes that are so balanced on the ingredients you put into it that if you put something else in there, you're going to ruin the dish. You
Wow.
don't need there. I mean, I've seen some where people have just added all this stuff, all these flavors,
Mm.
and what comes out is just a confusing mess. And what you need, and I've seen people do that with their days, these happy hamsters that have all this
Mm.
productive stuff going on and they're producing all kinds of great things. But it's like when you put it together, it's what are you doing? How are you reaching the goals of the
Yes.
organization? One thing I would recommend to folks, there's another good book. It's by I think it's Elijah Goldratt, Goldrat, called The Goal. It's a classic in business.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And the theory of constraints. And I love the one
Yep.
big lesson in there is that, just because you have a local optimum doesn't mean you're going to have global optimum. So sometimes it's
Right.
okay not to activate a resource or not to use a resource to 100% if the other
Hmm.
resources down the line can't handle that. And I see that with offices and with creative thinking. Sometimes it's okay, take a mental health day or take off in the
Yes.
afternoon. Go to the coffee house. I'm a big believer. I love coffee houses anyway, but go to the coffee house, read a couple of books, let the brain incubate. And
Hmm.
then when you get that flash of insight, and that's what comes out. And I tell folks, one thing is, as a business person, a lot of times your most creative stuff, how can I put this in the best way? It's not how, there's of course a number of creative ideas, right? But sometimes you
Mm,
pick the best creative idea. And sometimes it's one thing that you maybe spent 15 minutes on, just slap
yes,
it together, and that's your biggest seller.
right.
Give you a great personal
But
example just recently. Oh, go
but you
ahead.
wouldn't have gotten it unless you had all the ideas, right? In order
Right.
to
Yeah.
get to
Well,
that
that's the prep
particular.
stuff. That's the prep stuff.
Mhm.
So it's like, I'm getting ready with my walk. I'm getting it heated up. I'm getting, the water going, and I'm getting all my ingredients, and I'm chopping and getting everything around. So that's my prep. Then I start putting it in and letting it cook. And then that's when the illumination occurs and we have a great pad thai. Okay.
Right.
And I know
Well,
it's good because people love it.
you'll have to try that sometime.
Mhm.
What I really like, you triggered something in my mind that ties in with this from the goal from Gold Rat. There's a story in there that I really enjoyed, and it was about the Boy Scouts on the
Oh, yeah.
hike.
Hmm.
And I think that is something that as we manage our minds, as we free up time using these tools and everything, uh, and tying in the priorities to it, realizing that if we free up our minds and our time, hopefully we'll be able to get better at following our priorities, right? So with that, the Boy Scout example, they're on the hike. There's some slow Boy Scouts.
Hmm.
And the Boy Scouts want to get accomplished, they're doing their hike. They probably had time they wanted to get done within and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
there were some stragglers that either were overweight or tired or had health issues. And they said they could only go as fast as the slowest person on the
Hmm.
hike because they had an overarching priority that had to do with being human, being
Hmm.
a friend, being a good team player or whatever. And so they were willing to let go of some efficiencies in order to accomplish that broader goal or priority in that
Hmm.
case. And at least that's what I took from that example, like realizing that, yes, sometimes you would decide, no, don't wait around for the guys. You guys each individually get up that hill, get the fastest time. We're going to record it. And the stragglers, they'll just have a lower time. But they're saying, hey, we're a troop.
Hmm.
We got to slow down to allow for the slow ones. And so it showed what the priorities were. And I think that is a lesson we could all learn in our jobs and different things too, going in the goals. Is there something also about being human that we need to consider
Right.
and to know when that's important to consider and when it is not?
Mhm. If I remember the story correctly, they wanted to get to the campsite at a certain time while they still had daylight,
Yeah.
when everyone was carrying parts of the campsite. So you really wanted
Okay.
everyone to arrive at the campsite at the same time because that's how you get your tents up and everything.
Right.
So the goal wasn't getting to the top of the hill the fastest. The goal was to get to the campsite with everyone there while we still had daylight to set up a nice camp.
Okay. It's
And
been
once
a
you
long
got,
time since I read it.
oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, it's been a long time since too, but I remember that because I used to be in Boy Scouts, and that made a
Okay.
lot of sense. It's like we just want enough time to get a nice camp set up. So does it matter
Yes.
if we get up the hill in an hour or 2 hours? As long as we had enough daylight, we were fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in that scenario, that worked. And then to
Mhm.
be freed up and to have enough mental space and management of the mental space to know when to make those trade-offs, right? And that's part of the constraints also knowing which trade-offs are the right ones to make and
Mhm.
which ones you have absolutes that you need to incorporate. And so look at when we start talking, we cover like 15 different areas of
Yeah.
study.
Well, that's where AI can help us. It can make a nice transcript and put a bulleted list together for us.
Brings it all together. Wow. Are there any? I realize we could keep going, but I've realized, ooh, we probably shouldn't.
Yeah, we got 4 more
But are
minutes.
are there some final thoughts that you would want to share and not kind of leave people hanging with, before we're going to have to talk again
Yeah. Well,
about some of these things.
oh yeah. Well, the biggest thing I would help with people is that, before you become obsessed with the productivity and the time management, which is important, it is, you need to do things right and such. Figure out what your priorities are. because I've been in organizations where we have been really good and efficient at doing things, but no one's really asking for doing the right things. And what are we trying to achieve? And you've been in these kind of organizations too, where we do a lot of stuff and we do it well. And
Yes.
how can anyone say we're not doing it right? But doing it well, to what end? And that's one of the biggest questions I ask people. Why are we doing this? And there's
Yes.
even a book out there. What is the gentleman's name? It just slipped my mind. But start with why. You know who I'm talking about. Very famous.
Simon,
Yes, yes,
Simon. Yeah.
yes,
Simon Sinek.
yes. Cynic. That's right. Yeah. Start with why, because I've been in organizations, I won't name them, but where it's like, why are we doing this? And then it's funny
Hmm.
when you get the pushback, like, well, why are you asking such a question? Well, because I want to make sure what I'm doing means something.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. That is, I think the more you read those books, the more you have those experiences where you can do a lot of stuff, you start
Hmm.
going, whoa, time to narrow down. Choice architecture
Yeah.
becomes very important.
Exactly.
Uh, and AI can help with that too.
Yeah, because you've seen the advice out there is do what you love and the money will follow. No. I mean, I remember reading a New Yorker article about a guy that did that and he ended up in debt and down on the street. And it's like, don't do that. Do what you love, but also make sure the market accepts it and wants
Correct.
it.
Correct.
You have a good reason why. What's your magic? Because otherwise you just got to
Yeah.
hop.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to the sloppy, you start sloppy and then like keep
Mhm.
on figuring out and fine tuning. And I think
Yeah,
a lot of us have explored and tried some things and finally we're like, I don't think this is working. I think I'm
right.
going to go.
Oh, yeah.
This.
Being able to listen
So
to feedback is really important.
yes. And find people that are willing to be truthful with that
Mhm.
feedback.
Oh, yeah.
And that can be a struggle sometimes.
Hmm.
Because it doesn't, that's a whole nother topic, right? On being kind or nice. And it's a lot of us want to know exactly what you think of us
Right.
so we can change it if we want to, right? Or improve
Hmm.
upon it. So, well, thank you, Bill. This is a great discussion. I think all it does is spur more thoughts to
Okay.
have further discussions. So,
Sounds good.
but, but can you remind us of where we can get a hold of you if we'd like to connect?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn as Dr. Bill Brantley, and my address is Bill, at my company, BAS2A, well, Brantley Advanced Social Sciences Applications, BAS2A.com.
And that's the
Oh,
number two.
I'm sorry, BASAoffice.com. BASA Office. I had to
Okay.
change it because someone else had the other BASA.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's always the check we have to do nowadays, right? See who
Hmm.
else has already done this.
So many
So,
people on the internet.
yep. Yep. Very cool. Well, thank you again for your time, and I
Hmm.
look forward to further discussion.
Sounds good.